So we're good there. I don't have you as muted, so I don't know why I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Oh, I hear you a little bit.
Oh, we hear you now. Okay.
There, I can hear you now.
Now we're on the speaker.
There you go. Can you hear me?
Excellent.
I mean, you don't need to hear me, so that doesn't matter.
Oh, that's okay. We want to make sure we're all squared away, all the way around. So we are expecting Chris Kuschel to join us via Zoom.
Okay, good to
He'll
know.
be joining us. What, just now?
No, I'm saying good to know, so I know to look out for him.
Oh, yeah.
Because it doesn't automatically
Yes.
tell me there's someone waiting.
Okay, yeah. So Chris is expected to join. He's our new consultant. So he's going to be providing a few slides and a kickoff presentation. So we'll start off with that.
And I thought maybe you had a baby.
Not yet.
Oh, good Lord. I was like-
February, right?
I was-
Mid-February?
Plus it's-
February 1st. Okay.
But I was like, because your notes were there, I knew that your stuff would be there, and I just didn't see it, and I thought, oh, maybe they had a baby.
Thankfully, not yet. We've got 2 more weeks, hopefully.
All right.
Yeah, I think Kristen's like ready and also not ready, but
Oh, I bet.
the
How
reality of it.
about your daughters?
Our eldest is really, she's a big sister. She's 4, so she gets it.
I mean, is she excited?
She's excited. And our 2-year-old is excited, but I don't think she gets it.
Hey, she's not gonna be the baby.
Exactly, yeah.
Good shock.
Yes. And I mean, we've talked about it, we've talked about a baby, she's got a little baby doll she carries around, but it's still like,
It's not
it's
the
the Lily
same.
show when
He's
it's,
crying, and mom's got the attention, or she, yeah, he's crying and
yeah.
paying attention to him, not her.
Oh, you're here, come on. Excellent.
Do we know if the guest has all the login information and password he needs?
You might not have the password.
I don't think he has the I wasn't aware of the password. I just gave him the Zoom link.
You have
Okay,
his
it should,
number?
that should be fine. Last time we had issues.
Okay, let me, I'll give him a call real quick, just to confirm he has everything.
Okay.
The password, I would like to put that into our meeting schedule because I have just the Zoom link. I didn't know there was a password associated with that. So if you just want to email that to me, I can post that with the rest of our information so we
Should
have
be a
it.
meeting ID and a password. You have to have those 2 things.
Well, the ID is the link, so it's just, yeah, it's the link there, but the password goes with the link here on. So let me see, where am I? Let me give Chris a call. Or Jen, if you just want to reply back to Chris on the last email, he was on that one.
I believe he was, but I'm not looking at my work email.
No worries.
I think I was on that, Matt. I can reply to him.
Thank you. Good evening, Chris. How are you?
To the request.
I believe there's a link, and I don't recall I sent you the
I
password
have the
associated with that
presentation.
meeting
I'm
ID.
actually looking for their.
Okay.
Yeah,
689.
yeah, I have this
Right.
thing. Yeah, I'm looking for something that.
I did or did not?
would
Okay,
deliver.
are you ready for it?
And I didn't bring it with me tonight.
Okay. No worries.
Yeah.
Does he need it?
He does, but Chris, we just emailed it to you, so you should have that there. So when you're done installing the latest update, it should be ready. Yeah, Jared, what is it?
689.
689
392.
Oh, you have it?
390.
Okay, thank you.
And it's right on the page where all of the dates are listed
Joining
for your
right now.
meetings. The first thing on there is your Zoom link, and right under it, it says passcode.
Sorry, it took me a little longer.
Yeah,
It says
not a
it's-
problem. All right, I just gonna.
Oh, you're in.
Here.
All right, so Jen, do you see Chris joining?
Yep, I'm pulling him up as a panelist
Excellent.
right now.
All right, Chris, I'm gonna hang up. All right, so I'm sorry, Jen, you said that on our meeting schedule, I see the Zoom link on row 2, but I don't see where, did you put the password in?
The passcode is right underneath it. It's where, when you click onto your,
Are you talking on the
Um,
website?
Hey, Chris.
yep, on our website,
Okay, I'll
on the
get it later then.
calendar, right where your dates are listed.
Got it. Okay. Perfect. All right, let's see. Rory has a heating issue. He let me know that he may or may not be here on time, depending on if his HVAC folks show up or not.
Peter? Martin?
Pete? Yeah, he's not going to be here either. So outside of that, I believe we have quorum. Who is that? Jen, I think we hear your background there, Jen. So that said, I believe we have quorum, so we can get started. Do we want to stand for the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So according to our agenda, we have Chris Kuschel joining us from Fisher and Associates. Welcome, Chris, to the fray. Welcome, Chris, to the Zoning Advisory Committee, Boston Spa. We are excited to have you here and look forward to everything that you bring to the table. We have, yeah, actually, can we?
Stop item.
Yep. Oh, there you go. All right, Chris, now you're big and front and center on the screen for us. And so we are excited to engage you. I've had many conversations with Chris and about our approach, our subcommittees, our little break-off sessions to educate ourselves. And doing so, we have a lot of questions. And we are going to funnel the questions his way. So to lead off tonight, we will turn it over to Chris, so he can give us a brief kickoff of how the approach is going to go. Chris, how do you feel about questions? You want to wait for the end, or should we just jump in? How do you want to handle that?
I leave it to your choice. Either way is fine with me, whatever you prefer. If people want to shout out to make it seem more informal, that works for me. If you'd rather just wait till the end to hold it, I leave it up to you.
With that said, you have the floor.
All right, so I do have a handful of slides, and can you all hear me okay? Is the sound of fine?
Yep, you're good to go.
So just maybe before I start, just maybe just if people could just show their hands, who, if anyone, listened in to the recording of the interview that we did as we were bidding on this job. Anybody? Okay. A couple good. And the reason I ask is because I have a couple of the same slides and just want to know whether I don't want to be too redundant. So I'm going to share my screen now. Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen, but I don't see the PowerPoint as one of the options. That's,
I
oh, here we
believe
go.
Jen, to give you permission to present, is that, oh, something's happening. There we
Very
go.
good.
We've got it.
All right.
Do you want to start slideshow so you can maximize the the view there. There we
All
go.
right, can you see that now?
Yes, we can.
All right, so yeah, like I said, I have a handful of slides. First, I just want to sort of um, introduce myself. So my name's Chris Kushel. So I'll be the main point person doing this work for you all. I've recently relocated from Boston, which is where I spent most of, well, all of my life, as well as up until recently my professional career. So I've done a lot of planning and zoning in communities fairly similar to the Village, those kind of small New England kind of towns, which is really where I love to be doing this work.
Can you-
The two
sorry.
other,
Few of those
Sorry?
communities for us.
I'm sorry?
Can you, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you list off just a few of those communities for us so we can get a sense of like scale of how big, or what type of communities you've dealt
Yeah, the
with?
most recent one was the town of Rockport. That was I forget off the top of my head what the population is. I want to say around 10,000 people. Many of the communities where I've done work are doing zoning in a section of the town. So Scituate, which is spelled Scituate, is another one that's a small coastal community, but working on a scale that is probably not too different in terms of area from what a village in New York is. We don't have villages per se in Massachusetts. So those are a couple examples. And then also working on this is my boss, Don Netzger, who's both a planner and a landscape architect by trade. And then my colleague, Frank, who's out of our Buffalo office, who has decades of experience. And in this context particularly, he brings a lot of knowledge as it relates to aspects such as transportation and parking that will be incorporated into the zoning code. And Fisher, just in case, we've been around since the 80s. A couple aspects is we have this term called clientship, and really what this is all about is really just centering and putting the client first, and that's one of the, I think, the differentiators that Fisher has. In terms of planning, we have these three broad buckets of work that we do, and zoning really touches on many of them. And also values is another area where we recently just really discussed this and kind of put this together as what I do think are differentiators from some of our competition. And again, I'm happy to talk about this, but these three areas of principles really touch very strongly how we approach zoning. So to talk a little bit about the specifics for the approach for this type of project, we do believe that it aligns very well with the comprehensive plan, which is sort of what the kind of your initial driving force, which was recently updated, and ultimately the zoning needs to be updated to not only work better for you, but also be aligned with the comprehensive plan. And so we do that through a few areas. One is through engagement. So as I mentioned, on the one hand, this is a technical exercise, but on the other hand, there's a lot of input needed to really get it right. So when you have a comprehensive plan that has some broad goals, like might say, hey, this area should be revitalized with mixed use development. Well, what does that actually mean in a way that's context sensitive for the village? And so we think hearing as many voices, especially of groups who in some ways have been marginalized or don't typically take place in these types of planning projects, can be valuable. We will look at the various plans, especially a comprehensive plan, but we'll also be layering on additional types of relevant analysis to inform the updated zoning code, and ultimately creating a code that, and I had mentioned this to Matt, I mean, I think my kind of personal goal is at the end of this, you'll have a zoning code that works for you, it's user friendly, it helps lead to the type of development and land use patterns that you want, but also ultimately it will become a model and a template for other villages and communities of a similar size and scope throughout New York State, and hopefully beyond as well. And I think that would be a real mark of success in my mind. So a little bit about what I mean when I say a top quality zoning code. So one is that it's user friendly. Many times, and you're probably realizing this going through your own code, it was written in a sort of a different era, kind of feels like it was written by maybe a whole group of lawyers who almost try to make it as difficult to understand as possible. And modern codes that are best practice are written in a way that is still very clear, but it's more concise, and it's able to be understood by the actual users of the code. And that's done through more concise language, as well as the incorporation of diagrams and tables to make it more user-friendly and understandable. Second is that it will accurately reflect the vision and goals of the community. Because again, many times what you have is, I know you have in many cases of pre-existing nonconformities, for example, and many times that's actually what people want. Like you'll have some type of building that or use that you say, well, this is great, but it's actually illegal. And so we want to make sure that that what is legal is reflected in terms of what you actually want. And that finally, that it's holistic. So more zoning codes now are incorporating additional elements that maybe weren't found in traditional zoning codes, such as historic preservation, stormwater management, other aspects like that. No, I don't want to put the cart before the horse here, but it's just something to think about in terms of where ultimately, if you were creating this new zoning code, what it might sort of end up looking like a little bit. And there's a number of different, I think, best practice examples that could be used as a template. So I have a couple here. The Buffalo Green Code, my colleague Frank, as I mentioned, he had worked on this and had a substantial portion of this, which has been an award-winning code. And is an example of what is, I think, a model for a mid-sized city throughout the country at this point. And you can kind of just get a sense from these visuals how it's sort of organized and laid out. It kind of starts with these, it has a section about the different districts with a purpose, with a diagram that kind of gives you the feel for what this area looks like. So best practice zoning codes, yes, uses are still part of it, of course, we're not getting away from uses or anything like that, but we're focusing more on what is the character of the neighborhood, taking a more holistic view of that, and then having the regulations that can actually achieve that, which was often not the case with traditional zoning codes. And
Chris, can I
so
interject?
in this, I'm sorry?
Can I interject? I have a question about this.
Sure.
So Buffalo it may be a mid-sized city, but from our perspective, it is a massive metropolis compared to the 5,500 or so residents of Ballston Spa. How
Sure.
could you relate something on this scale to meet our needs?
Yep.
This perspective to meet our needs?
Absolutely. That's a great question. So one of a term that people who do zoning codes often use is called calibrating. So it's taking the principles. So in this case, let's say that this has a neighborhood residential part of their town, right? So in this case, it's sort of essentially mostly residential, allowing a little bit of diverse kinds of housing. That might, I'm not saying it is, but it might or might not be appropriate for Ballston Spa, but something like this might be. The heights might be different, the density might be different, the specific characteristics might be different, but the organization might be the same. So we might come up with what is the district in Ballston Spa that makes sense? Maybe instead of having, I don't know, there's, let's say, a dozen districts here in Buffalo, maybe we have 5 in Ballston Spa. I'm making that number up. But then when you have that district, it might have these different types of buildings. Again, the specific buildings might differ from what is allowed in Buffalo from Ballston Spa, but for that, whatever is appropriate in Ballston Spa, we could have a similar type of logic. What are the requirements for the lot that makes sense for Ballston Spa? Whatever the requirements for where the building is organized and sited on the lot, and this would change by district. What are the heights, etc. And that's the way it would work, essentially.
So we would take the same framework and approach and just scale it down to meet our needs is basically what I'm hearing.
Yes, you said that in a
Okay.
much more concise manner than I did, but yes, that's exactly it.
Fair enough. I just want to make sure. All right. So that said, it's a framework and an approach. So what's the name of this approach? What's the name? He must be a name to it.
So I'm a little hesitant to use this approach, this name, because this is called a form-based code, and I get nervous using this term because it means different things to different people. And the way that, I've spent there's a lot of different viewpoints on this, and I don't want to go too much down a rabbit hole. Some people consider form-based code a complete alternative to what is to traditional zoning. I think in reality, the way it is in practice today, there's essentially a spectrum of options between the traditional, very traditional zoning code and a sort of full-blown form-based code. And there might be, for Boston Spa, I discussed this during the interview, different districts might have different levels of this type of specificity. It might not be necessary in, let's say, a single-family residential neighborhood, for example.
Got it.
I think the general look and framework, though, is helpful because it's regardless of the level of detail, it's an easy thing to understand. Another example is a template from a Boston-based firm. It's called Place Code, and this was specifically designed for sort of the New England town and designed to sort of pick and choose as a template code what is appropriate. And I've borrowed from this a lot for especially for single districts, which in Massachusetts is fairly common. We'll rezone just a downtown area, and that's what I spent a lot of my time doing. And I like the organization that this has as well. Similarly kind of set where you might have in this case, a town center for this example, and then you'll have different. What I like about this is the requirements for the lot are separate from the requirements for specific buildings. And so you have in the town center, you end up with a consistent sort of setback and feel even for different buildings. And then for different building types, there would be different requirements as it relates to height and massing. We've often included what I call building components. That's what's on the right. And so if we have things in Boston Spa that are sort of paradigms that you see a lot, and you're like, oh, we love these covered porches. That's something that we can bake into the design standards as well. So I have just two more slides, and then I'll stop and take comments or questions. But and I alluded to this, but the way that I sort of see this rezoning process, there's two sort of big buckets, and they're both very important. One is, for lack of a better term, what I'm calling administrative. This is the focus that ensures that the code works the way that you want it to work. It clarifies the process. Often these old zoning codes are very difficult to understand. What is the process for an application? What happens if something's denied? When does it go to the ZBA versus a special permit? These are often not clear, these types of things. There's often, because zoning codes often are amended in a patchwork manner over the years, there tends to be conflicts, there tends to be antiquated language, other things that are just obsolete. And so this is kind of, in my mind, focusing on not necessarily changing policy, but working in a way that the users can actually make use of it efficiently. And then the other side, the other bucket, is what I'm calling the policy side. And this is sort of the bigger picture stuff that relates to really ensuring that the code is aligned with your village goals and the recommendations, especially as has been determined and adopted through your comprehensive plan. And so this is where we might end up creating, just as an example, maybe there's new districts, maybe the boundaries of existing districts would change, maybe there are changes to either the allowed uses or to the standards, for example. And then in terms of where we get that information, you all, as knowing this code, is sort of the prime method of that. There could also likely be certain interviews from key stakeholders. This could be through developers, building inspectors. We could brainstorm a list of that. Best practices that we would, Fisher can bring to the table, as well as the general public for certain aspects. So, I think, as you all know, over the next few months, you'll be working on kind of your own review of this document. And I'm very grateful for all the effort that you're all putting into that, and it frankly makes my job a lot easier. And so I will then incorporate and address as much as I can all your comments. And then we'll have a portion where we are bringing this to the public or to other groups like the various stakeholders and trying to get some additional information and input from them. And then we'll go through the process of drafting the recommendation, of drafting the zoning, which tends to be an iterative process. And so this schedule is intended to be fluid, and we can adjust this as we go along. So I will stop there. I'll stop sharing, at least for the moment, but I can go back to the slides, but this way you can.
So Chris, I know
see.
that on that timeline, I know that we will get together and work out when you want to come back to the committee, because I noticed you did have a few dates on the calendar, for example, like public hearings and things like that. So I want to clarify some of that stuff later with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are in some ways placeholders based upon from the RFP when you were very looking for adoption. So we can obviously adjust all of this. I think the next time that I was planning that we had talked about would be after you've gone through over the next couple of months. But I'm certainly happy to attend a session, you know, in the interim, if it's helpful. Once the weather's nice, I also want to come down there and spend, you know, a day. What I told Matt is usually when I do these projects, what I like to do is go there and literally walk for hours just to really understand as much as I can the area, and I find that is a very useful exercise. Just don't want to do it when it's snowing and freezing.
We're happy to set up like a tour to kind of give a little more structure around that. So we're happy to kind of set that up whenever you want. Also, we will probably take you up on your offer to sit in on some of these Zoom meetings while we're going through the code ourselves, because we've had our first session was the last meeting, and we've already, I know a lot of folks have already had questions come up that we want to kick your way for clarity. So we were hoping the last half of this meeting, we can do some of that and potentially do some of that in the near future as well.
Chris, could you tell us a little about the types of public engagement you do? Is it typically, you mentioned, of course, walking the village. Do you try to, you know, get different representation from different neighborhoods? And if so, like, how do you accomplish that? How do you find it effective?
So there's we've used a number of means. You know, I will say this budget is just to be candid, a lot smaller than some of the other projects we've worked on. So, you know, I just want to, you know, I don't want to promise the world that we can't,
Sure.
you know, can't do. So I'll just kind of say in the past, done we find that multiple touch points is the best way to engage as many people as possible. Some examples that are effective can be setting up, for example, a booth at a farmer's market. So that's one way to bring the essentially almost like go to them, like where they're already going, because the issue is, so the traditional way of doing planning has been you have a night meeting, right? At like, let's say 7 o'clock at night, and it's an in-person forum. And there are a lot of advantages to that. You can get some great interaction. You can have some fun, different types of exercises to get information. You can have one-on-one conversations. And so it's still a valuable thing to do. However, the challenge is you tend to get sort of a one demographic, and you tend to miss a lot of other people. So, you know, a family with a kid, they're probably not going to spend their evening going to a forum for something that isn't super relevant in their immediate life. That's something we found. Doing online forums can increase the number of people joining. So that's another method that I find quite effective and is relatively low cost. You know, it's not as quote unquote fun as some of the kind of exercises you can do when you're in person, but you can get a lot of great information. You can have small breakout groups for certain times if they are if we have enough people that warrants that. And so I do like doing those. Sometimes some municipalities have liked to do concurrent hybrid events. I generally recommend against it, to be honest. I find that no matter what the technology is, and how good it works. Have found that one of the groups, either people in person or people at home, one of them has a suboptimal experience, and I would rather just do two separate meetings, even if it's the exact same subject, 2 nights apart or something like that. We've done walking tours. That can be a great way to do it when the weather's nice, and often that's kind of paired. So maybe earlier in the day, there's a walking tour, and then you have a forum later on. We've done surveys. I tend to do surveys less for zoning. I find that works better for higher level things like a comprehensive plan than it does specifically for zoning. So those are a few examples, and we could talk about other ones. I guess the only other thing I would mention is focus groups. It's great if we can sometimes engaging with children or high school students is sort of an innovative way to get information from a group that, probably wouldn't typically be participating in a government process like this. But these are the people who frankly will probably be the ones around to see what the results of this zoning work. And so I love to engage them when possible.
Cool, thank you.
Chris, I have 2 questions for you. The first one is about whether or not you've even started the zoning diagnostic, if that process has happened yet.
Done a very kind of cursory read through of the zoning, but nothing in depth. That I think in terms of really doing that, a lot of that comes from information, because there's no right or wrong for a lot of these things. Although there are best practices, a lot of it will come from you and or potentially in addition, interviews that we think would be appropriate to do.
Okay, and the second question relates to something that we needed at last month's meeting or last meeting. Our former consultant that worked with us on the comprehensive plan developed some maps for us in a GIS data layer, but we don't have digital access to those layers. Is there any chance you should be able to get those for us so we can use them in a larger scale print format during our breakout sessions?
I just want to clarify. So are you asking for, I just want to make sure, what exactly are you looking for us to provide?
We're looking for the digital versions of 3 of our maps that showed up in our comprehensive plan. That if you're able to get that from our former consultant, we only have access to them as part of a PDF.
Oh, I see.
And we need the future land use vision map, the Village of Ballston Spa property classifications map, and the Village of Ballston Spa existing conditions map. We've tried to find out if we ever got digital versions of those maps, and we did not. They're basically 8.5 by 11 color copies in our comprehensive plan, but we don't have digital layers. So if you're able to get that from Behan Consulting for us, that would be very helpful for our breakout sessions as we talk about, brainstorming for the zone.
Well, I'm happy to reach out. I don't have a relationship with them, but I will, I can find a contact and reach out and represent it as on behalf of the village.
Thank you.
And Chris, I can work with you on getting in contact and reaching out as well.
Thanks.
I'll put it on my plate too. No.
Great.
So were those your slides? Is that what you had for us, Chris?
Yeah, that sufficient. We just want to give a quick introduction, but
No, that was good. I wanted to make sure there wasn't anything left there because we wanted to have any other conversation or questions for Chris. I do have a few next steps that I captured. One, I'll reach out to you to see if we can collaborate on getting those maps with Behan. I'll work with him to make sure you have a contact. And then also, Chris, we'll have to set up some time to chat about meeting schedules, when you should join us. Looking at the revised timeline, now that we have an executed contract, what does that new timeline look like? And to start ballparking things in like that, so.
Yep.
I have that on our schedule. Well, we have Chris here, and before our breakout sessions, does anyone here have, on the committee, have any questions for Chris?
If we have additional questions along the way as we brainstorm, how do we get that information to you? What format would you like that?
I guess there's two options. If you, I'm happy if you want to email things directly. I guess there's three options. One is email me directly. Two is funnel things through Matt. And maybe in some ways that might make a little more sense just to have everything kind of streamlined. The third is I know you have a Google Doc, and if you want to have a section of that with questions, then I can kind of respond in writing to that Google Doc.
Yeah, I think the Google Doc would work to
That's,
capture that.
if you're gonna funnel through me, I'll use that Google Doc. We set that up so each mini breakout has their own tab. And we can list it, and it's very clear which one, like, we can categorize them saying, this is a question for you, Chris. And so you just have to go through and review them, and then to the right, you can add your comments there if that's easiest
Sure.
for you.
Let's do that.
And that's actually the Google Doc that I shared with you a few days ago. So you
Yep.
have access. So he has access to that already. And so that's why my follow-up emails this morning to everybody was, get your questions in now because Chris can already start looking and responding. He already has access to that stuff. So, excellent. All right, we're excited to get going. So, if we don't have any other questions for Chris, we can rearrange the room and we can jump into our breakout sessions. Question for y'all. Do you want Chris to hang out a bit and just while, like in the background and on mute until we have a question the next few minutes, or how do we want to manage our time with Chris? This is the unstructured part I haven't really fully thought through.
So that's kind of weird if he
I think
sits
it's
there and
still-
waits.
Yeah,
It's still kind of early.
I agree.
Okay, okay.
yeah, it
Because
could be better use of his time to.
agreed, but I know Marilyn, last time,
Yeah.
I know you had a lot of questions, like, where's Chris? We should
Well,
ask questions.
Yeah, I mean, we have a tremendous amount of questions about the code and why it's written the way it is and why there seems to be gaps. But, you know,
Sorry.
I think he's explained that it was a collaborative effort and it just didn't come up to modern standards because it is almost, you know, it's more than 30 some odd years old, so. But it's still, it would be helpful to have you involved in the next meeting, whether it be one meeting each month or half a meeting where we can maybe get the back and forth on some of the questions that we're raising.
Like right up front
Yeah.
before we start and then.
Yeah. Because there are a lot of gaps
Okay.
here, and how can we brainstorm on something, you know, that really is so, it's missing a lot of detail. I mean, we can all put our heads together, but you certainly have, you know, better information than us.
But we do have some knowledge between us in this room, so again.
Oh, right, yeah, we can all contribute and we can
there's
all
certain
brainstorm
questions
on
maybe
it, but
somebody here can answer those.
yeah,
questions.
ultimately, he's gonna give us the, you know, the diagnostic memo and we'll have where we need to go, the direction.
Yeah, there's another, maybe this adds a wrinkle to this, but, you know, since we're on Zoom, since we're breaking out, it makes sense, I think, to have multiple people who have computers that can join the meeting and from each
Oh, yeah,
team,
that's a good point.
so that anybody who's on Zoom is able to jump through meetings. And it might make sense then for Chris to
We
join
wanna
us
how
for
to
the
manage
second half of a meeting.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, like the second half of the second meeting every month. And he could hop between breakout rooms and talk directly to each of the smaller
Yeah,
groups.
I like that. I was wondering how to manage, like, if we have 3 breakouts, how are we going to manage that? But it makes sense if each breakout team has a laptop
Right.
on the bridge and you can just hop to each computer basically, and that would kind of keep the crosstalk down too. That's what I was going with that.
Everybody would already be in the midst of it, going over things and having questions. It wouldn't be, we
Exactly.
just got here and like, okay, what are we doing?
Yeah, that makes sense.
It'd be better use.
That makes sense, Chris. What are your thoughts on meeting like halfway through the meeting after we get started, just to field the room to see if we have any questions out there?
Yeah, and so this is, yeah, that seems like a good approach.
Okay.
So we'll just have to let me know when that meeting schedule is, and I'll have to check for conflicts, but to the extent I can attend, I will, and if I can't for some reason, if people want to send the questions ahead of time, it sounds like questions are coming up as you're going through it, so I understand that. But if not, I can always follow up after as you capture those questions during your breakouts, but yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yep. So you also have access on that Google Drive. I sent you a few links. One of them was also the Google Drive. So there's a spreadsheet on the root of that directory called Zach Meeting Schedule. And you'll see our meeting schedule listed out, times, locations. You'll see the Zoom link and all of that jazz. So I don't think we should waste time now going through which one you want to, like every one that you'll attend. I can take that up offline and we can figure out if it's gonna be once a month or whatever it's going to be, but it's gonna be the second half of that meeting.
Okay. I don't
Uh,
recall, how often are you meeting? Is it once a month or is it more?
Twice a month.
Twice a month, okay.
Yep. Okay, I think that'll do it. Any other questions for?
Can the public ask some questions for you?
I don't know, I was debating on that. I mean, ultimately, this is our committees, so
No,
it's
I
up to
don't think
us.
so.
No,
It's not a.
cause, yeah,
community.
let's take a vote on that. Any favor of, public comment?
Maybe for a 5 minute.
Cause we're gonna
gotta
get
break
derailed
down
and we're gonna start eating into our agenda that we wanted to get through between now and April. So, all right.
I can do that later.
Yeah, that would probably be best. All right, Chris, we'll let you go. Thank you very much. I'll give you a call at some point in the next few days. And in the guise of transparency, I'll make sure that, everybody here on the committee knows what the timeline is and I'll make sure, actually, since it's well, let me think.
Can
So
we get
since
a
it's-
copy of tonight's presentation?
I will send that, I guess I'll send that to you, Matt, and you can, because I don't think I have everyone's email.
No, also, so after we communicate about meeting dates and new timelines, I'll go ahead and put that out to the trustees and everything, so that way everybody has the revised timeline and all of this. So that makes sense.
Yep.
And we'll have pretty clear, what dates we're targeting, maybe not set in stone, but what we're targeting. And so, for example, I know one of them will be like, when you want to come into town to do like a tour, maybe I can work with, some folks here to put a little more structure on that, maybe things we want you to see along the way and things like that.
Neighborhoods.
Yeah, neighborhoods and things of note that you should see, so.
Yeah, definitely, we'll definitely do that. Yeah, this all sounds good. I'm really looking
Okay.
forward to working with you all. And I guess I would just leave with one thought as you're kind of working through this, but it just kind of, if it seems like there's gaps or if there's things that don't make sense, I feel like that, the why is a little bit less important at this point because we're looking forward to kind of completely overhauling the code. So, we just want to make sure we get it right in the future. And so I think that's how I would kind of think about this. But all right, well, great. Good luck with everyone.
Thank you, Chris,
Thanks, Chris.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
We'll be in touch.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, before breakouts, thoughts?
Yep.
You feeling okay about this? Okay. Come Darvin, you guys good about, okay. All right, let's break up into our three groups. So let's move some tables
Yeah,
around.
we should be there.
We'll keep the public back here and we wanna
Just turn around.
I could just. Here.
It's just the three of us.
Yeah, Rory is not going to be here.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty straightforward.
Really? James on?
Leave the mic on or put it off.
Hey, Jen, are you awake still, or did we put you to sleep? I'm not sure, you're.
I'm here.
Oh, you're there, okay, is there anybody, we're about to do a public comment, so if there's anybody, do you see anybody online for us?
There are only you and I online.
Okay, all right, so public comment is open, if then, Liz, go ahead.
On your Google Docs.
Yeah.
Is there a way to read on this? Or-
There is, and you have access.
Oh,
You do, I've sent all that stuff out, I'm happy to respond.
okay, I couldn't get into it.
No, this is all transparent, it's all open.
Oh.
All trustees have been sent the link, I'll resend it again. Oh,
She's the former trustee.
well, you probably still have access from when you were, so.
It might be through her trustee email though.
Oh, you know what, it may be.
Yeah,
Maybe.
no.
Yeah.
The outside world can see.
I don't see a problem with that, yeah.
But
Yeah.
you can't change it.
Yeah, no, it's, like, the only ones, everybody has, we have full edit, but I think the trustees right now have read.
Yeah.
I can open it up to the public with read.
I wonder, that might actually make things easy too for sharing with Jen. if
I
we
was
just-
thinking the same thing, Jen, like, about meetings and agendas to make sure, because I try to include you on, if Jared sends minutes out, and if I send an agenda out, I want to make sure I include you on it, but then the onus is on you to pick up through the email to make sure you post it to the website.
The agenda, sorry, the word escaped me. The agenda that you sent me for this meeting is posted on the website where all your meetings are listed.
Okay, perfect. So I guess what I'm getting at is, would it be easier if we just pointed you to a folder to say, here's where our minutes and our agendas are? Would that be easier for you just to grab them, or do you want to just continue getting email updates from us?
So we could share like one link that could go for every meeting and it would just be agendas, minutes from previous.
That would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can
That would
set
be
that.
fine.
And Jared usually gets them sent out before the next meeting anyway. Minutes from the last meeting, and then I try to get the agenda out before the upcoming meeting, so.
Your agenda was relatively concise, so it was very easy to just post next to tonight's meeting.
Yeah, these agendas are gonna be pretty straightforward anyway for these meetings, so. All right, cool. All right, any more public comment?
Just, I did send you a request to read the docs, but I don't remember getting something back, but you
Yeah,
did.
I did. I can do it again. If you want to resend, I'm happy to, I did it several times, I think, so,
Really?
yeah, happy
I
to,
don't
yeah.
remember seeing it.
Yeah,
All
I
right, so
can,
I'll
I
just-
can check right now if you want.
Okay, I'll go to the link that you sent and I'll go in and see if I have permission, but I appreciate being able to just read stuff.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's all here for us all to do. I mean, this is all, we're all in that together, so. Okay, all right. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Matt, this
Yes.
ahead of next meeting.
Oh, yeah, we have
So-
to.
Do I want to, like, I'll probably come in a little earlier and probably
Yeah.
use my laptop.